Good afternoon to this Hot Topic Tuesday, alcohol and the holidays. My name is Juan Pascual. I'm a community organizer with AADAP in the city of Inglewood. I will now pass it to AADAP's intern, Rashane Akbar Davis, who has some alcohol for us. Go ahead, Rashane.
Hi, Marlon. Thank you, guys. Hi, my name is Rashane Akbar Davis, and I'm an intern from Cal State LA with AADAP. And today I'm going to be discussing what alcohol does to the human body. So to start off, alcohol might seem to make you happy, but in actuality, it's a depressant. What is a depressant? A depressant is a substance that reduces arousal and stimulation. They do not necessarily make a person feel depressed, but they affect the nervous system by slowing down the messages from the brain to the body, which in turn causes the body to lose motor coordination, slows brain function, and it makes a person feel drowsy. So this picture to the right, you can see that different parts of the brain and how the alcohol affects. For example, the cerebral cortex, which affects emotional control, information retention, and vision. Another part of the brain that is affected is the cerebellum, which affects coordination, balance, and reflexes. And it also is the part of the brain that causes shaking and tremors whenever someone is intoxicated. Okay. What alcohol does to the human body. So heavy or frequent drinking can cause different organs to be impacted in different ways by alcohol. On the picture to the left of me, you can see that many organs are negatively affected by alcohol consumption. This includes the brain, the heart, the esophagus, the pancreas, the liver, and the stomach. Heavy drinking may lead to irregular heartbeat or arrhythmia, stroke, high blood pressure, liver diseases, for example, cirrhosis of the liver, pancreatitis, throat cancer, stomach cancer, and cancer of the esophagus. Alcohol in the holidays. So the alcohol industry makes about 25% of its $49 billion a year profit between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day. In the chart to the right shows the top 5 biggest days at the liquor store, which include New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve, and Thanksgiving Eve, among others. During the holidays, many people drink in a celebratory mood. However, there are others who, experience stress. They find the holidays a stressful time. It can be financially stressful for some, and others are quite lonely during the holidays. So those are some things that cause excessive drinking during the holidays. Alcohol in the holidays. Studies show that most adults do not know what high-risk drinking looks like or do not know how long it takes for alcohol to leave the system. So this leads to over-drinking and significant impairment. On the chart to the left, where you see the champagne flutes, it shows the different levels of blood alcohol concentration levels, and it shows how they can impair a person. So the chart on the right shows what the US standard drink size is. For example, a standard beer with 5% alcohol is about 12 ounces, and a standard glass of wine is about 5 ounces, which has about 12% alcohol. And it takes about an hour to for the liquor to metabolize in the system. However, blood alcohol concentration is reduced by just 0.0015% per hour, which is a really small number. But the thing is that because of it's such a small number, people don't realize that they're actually still impaired during the time of intoxication. So it's a pretty slippery slope. So one thing to consider is your age, your gender, the metabolism speed, if you ate or how much you ate before you started consuming liquor. So you have to understand that even though the liver has metabolized the alcohol in your system, you still have to understand that alcohol can still be detected in the body up to 6 hours with the blood test. up to 24 hours, 12 to 24 hours with a breathalyzer, up to 12 to 24 hours in a urine test, up to 12 to 24 hours in, up to 90 days, when drinking. So that's something pretty serious to consider, because you never know like how much damage you're doing to yourself, or if the liquor is gone out of your system, you feel sober and you think everything is okay, but then you can get behind the wheel and cause yourself to get in a lot of trouble, or you can possibly hurt someone. So it's important to understand that though alcohol metabolizes pretty quickly, you should also take into consideration how long it actually takes to still be detected in the body. So that's like a number one thing that you guys should remember and consider. And even though a lot of alcohol metabolizes out of the body pretty quickly, clinicians still rely on observations of alcohol use to confirm alcohol use. So some examples of that would be they look for slurred speech, slower motor coordination, disorientation, and just overall red eyes, the smell of liquor, things of that nature. So those are some things to consider for the holidays when drinking, guys. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it back to Tracy.
Thank you so much, Rashane, for sharing the facts about alcohol and how it can affect the body, and
No
especially during the holidays. With that, I'm going to go ahead and introduce, we have two guest speakers today. Our first of which is Officer Juan Perez from the Gardena Police Department. Officer Perez has been a member of the Gardena Police Department for 5 years with the traffic division for about a year. And he was recently certified as a drug recognition expert. And our second guest, is Angela Bartolome. She is the clinical director. Clinical director of AADAP. Angela is a graduate of USC School of Social Work, practicing mental health and co-occurring substance use in the LA community for the past 10 years. Angela has been a community organizer for nearly 20 years, bridging nonprofit platforms with a community-based lens into behavioral health care and services. Welcome, both of you, to our Hot Topic Tuesday today. We're so glad that you can be here. And we are going to go ahead and start with Officer Perez. So I'm going to give you the floor for a bit, and then you and I are going to have a little bit more of a chat.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you, Tracy. So, Tracy mentioned I am currently assigned to the Traffic Bureau with Gardena Police Department. I've been there for 5 years, a year with the Traffic Bureau. So a couple of my duties are basically conduct traffic enforcement, handle traffic collisions, and primarily DUIs as well. And I just want to start off by mentioning a couple statistics for 2020. So for the year 2020, we had 4 fatal traffic collisions. We had 431 traffic collisions. Out of all those, 399 involved some sort of injury, and 8 of those were severe injuries, which could be basically anything with great bodily injury. And out of all those traffic collisions, 30 of them involved DUI. Another statistic that we have is our city issued 950 traffic citations. And why is this important? Because there is a strong correlation between traffic enforcement and the incident of collisions. The more enforcement increases, the traffic collisions decrease. And what does the city of Gardena do to help all this? So we have, the city of Gardena is huge on district meetings, which if you're a resident of the city of Gardena, you can attend those whenever they're posted online, or when you hear about them, and you can attend. And in those meetings, you're able to talk to our lieutenants and basically talk about any of your concerns. It could be from traffic hazards, people speeding up and down the street, to anything that affects your lifestyle, living, or anything that you feel is a concern. So they reach out to the lieutenants get back to us, and we hear about it and we try to improve that for the community. So a lot of these district meetings, usually there's someone there to talk about some sort of traffic hazard or something that's related to traffic. So we're always invited. We always hear what the community has to say, and we try to just basically better the issue that the community has. So another thing is that throughout the year, the city of Gardena obviously has DUI checkpoints and different traffic details that are specifically pinpointed towards, it could be either from primary collision factor to basically DUI enforcement. And those could be either date and time specific to maybe the day of the Super Bowl, to maybe a boxing match or some sort of large event. So we can have a specific officer working that shift, specifically primarily out there to try to detect DUIs. And I don't have the specific number of DUI arrests for 2020 when there was an officer specifically assigned to those details. But basically something that we look for is, like Rajane stated, when people consume alcohol, slow down brain function, and we have lack of motor coordination, and makes you feel drowsy. So now you take all that into consideration and you put yourself behind a vehicle. And a lot of the stuff that we look for as officers is, it could be as simple as forgetting to turn on your lights, to swerving in and out of the road, stopping way before a stoplight, or could be even failing to stop for a red light. So those are just little clues that we look for. And when we're out there conducting enforcement, those are some of the clues that we look for. And a simple traffic violation could lead to a DUI arrest that can ultimately save someone's life.
There is a question, Officer Perez, in the chat while you're talking. Someone asks, do you find with DUI stops you've witnessed that the driver has underage passengers in the car? Have you ever had that?
Yes and no. It depends. Sometimes it could be from the parent driving home from a party, and there's children in the vehicle, but for the most part, it's usually overage individuals.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to, was there any other statistics that you wanted to share before I jump into my questions that I have?
No, you can go ahead and start.
Okay, go ahead. So, so I wanted to know if there are specific times during the year that DUI checkpoints might be used in Gardena. Do you guys have specific times?
No, there's no specific time and date. Those just vary.
Vary.
Yeah, in 2020, we had 2 DUI checkpoints.
Okay, thank you. And let's see. And you had mentioned community policing and how Gardena PD is a great advocate of the community policing. Have you found that does it make a difference in what people are reporting or how often they're willing to report because of the community policing relationship that you've developed?
Yes, because it doesn't have to be something major. It could be something minimal that it's affecting someone's lifestyle, and they don't feel safe. So they bring it up, it gets back to the officers, and what we do is try to just basically make a safer place for the community.
Great. And I do notice, because I'm able to sit in on some of the neighborhood watch meetings. A big part of that is people are talking about the street racing that goes on, and I've heard how officers have been able to kind of make a difference in that, in being able to.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's not just in the city of Gardena, but in all our surrounding cities, we've had a large increase in these street takeovers, car clovers. So what the city of Gardena has been able to do is to assign an officer during the evening hours of primarily during the weekend, basically Friday through Monday. And we have a specific officer out and just basically being visible in the city to try to prevent them from coming into our major intersections.
That's great. And in terms of also with going back to DUIs, during the holidays, is there a bigger police force out on the streets because knowing that the holidays are coming around?
There is, just because, like I mentioned, there's specific officers who are assigned. I'm assigned to the traffic bureau. So there's a traffic officer assigned to each shift. And on top of that, there's officers assigned to primarily DUI enforcement.
Okay. And one thing I do notice is that you were recently certified as a DRE, drug recognition expert. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what that means?
A DUI is not only alcohol. You could be impaired by any other drug. So basically you learn about the 7 categories and how you can distinguish the different symptomology of all the drug categories and how to basically pinpoint down to one specific category.
Oh, okay. So like for instance, what would you look for? How would you know that someone is driving under the influence of, say, marijuana? Does it show differently than how if someone is driving under the influence of alcohol?
It's sort of similar. You look for the bloodshot eyes, and different symptomology that you're able to distinguish between marijuana and alcohol. Obviously, we all know alcohol. Once again, like I said, Rajane spoke about it. You slows down your brain function, feel drowsy, you get bloodshot, watery eyes, and then lack of motor coordination. And there's a similarity between alcohol and marijuana, but there's different clues that help you distinguish between each and every different category.
So here's a question. Do you have, since the legalization of marijuana, has the department noticed an increase in marijuana related DUIs?
I would say no, it's constant. It's been consistent, well, pretty much steady throughout with marijuana DUIs. It is common for someone to get arrested for DUI while under the influence of marijuana. And so if people don't think you can get arrested for driving while under the influence of marijuana, I would say they're wrong. And there is a great amount of arrests that are made for driving while under the influence of marijuana.
Okay, thank you so much. I think those are all the questions that I have right now. So we're going to, oh, I'm sorry, there's another question popped up. Yes, there's something. Have you heard about alcohol to go or cocktails to go allowed by the state of California? Have you heard about that? Oh, you haven't heard about that. Okay. There are certain restaurants or bars that are allowing people to take alcohol away from the establishment and drive with it in their car.
I have not
to
aware
home.
of that.
So, I mean, hearing about it now, what's your take on that? What do you think about that?
It's irresponsible primarily on behalf of the establishment, the organization that's allowing people to drive home with alcohol.
Yeah, it's not a good idea because there's a temptation to pick up the alcohol that's in a cup or whatnot to drink it and not thinking. Absolutely. As well. Yeah. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass things on to Marlon and Angela so that they can continue the conversation there.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Officer Perez, for sharing the information. So we started off with Rashane, right? Sharing just some facts of how alcohol affects the body, some trends. Officer Perez was able to share trends in Gardena, but with Angela, the questions that I have was to kind of look more, I guess, at a human level, right? So Rashane mentioned that maybe sometimes during the holidays, reasons for people to drink is maybe it's stress, maybe it's the finances, maybe there's family members not available, or they're not, with their families. So if the holidays approaching, is there a general mood change during this time period? And how does that affect people in general?
Yeah, there's a lot of different mood changes, whether it's like good or bad. I don't think it's a good practice for me to say like this is a good mood or bad mood. Like just like sadness and stress is just part of our process, right? Those are all markers for our body to just give it awareness. But there's a lot of reasons why it could change in mood, from like it's getting gray outside. Most of us today, we're just like, okay, what's going on? Like, all right, how do I mentally feel about the lack of sun? I think some people can even notice that, if you've ever talked to anyone who lives in areas that they have real winters or really gloomy days for more days of the year, that they have those like really strict like seasonal depression or increase in stress because it's just colder and isolating. Less people want to go outside and socialize, right? Or even with the holidays, sometimes it's a mood change because a lot of times this is like anniversaries or memories of people who aren't with us anymore. There's death anniversaries. I don't think, and people don't have to like out themselves or anything, but if they can think about how many of us know somebody that died around the holiday season, because for some of the elder folks I've worked with that were doing end of life work, they were saying, I just need to see one more holiday, and all of a sudden they're not there anymore. They just wanted to stay like long enough for one more moment with the people that they love. So there's just a lot of different changes. I mean, it can even be like the stress is high. So there was a study that they would just in a community that they identified who identifies more stress during the holidays, and 38% of the community usually do. And a lot of the times it's like parents, like many times moms who already carry a lot of like systemic burdens of taking care of everybody. Now you have to set up and prepare for families, or that you have to like make sure that all these people have such a good experience and carry a lot of that weight for themselves. So there's so many reasons for mood changes. Also, like this time we change in sleep. Daylight savings does stuff to people. If anyone ever noticed like, oh, I'm a little more sluggish, or I'm just sleeping more or less than I used to. We're doing a lot of adjusting during this time, right?
The daylight savings time jumps to me. As a parent, I have 3 toddlers right now. So I plan ahead. I'm not trying to wake up super early. The next one is the one that really scares me. But going to an earlier point is it's true. My grandmother passed away the day before my birthday. So my birthday first. So I never forgot my mom that Christmas. Like just the mood that she was in. And I can't remember who, but that sentiment of like, let me get through the holidays, and I'm like, you can take me away, I guess, that kind of sentiment. I've seen that. I've heard that so much in the community, just to be with the family one more time. And
that was my grandma too. And it's such a like, who would have thought that? It was like extra alert from October to February, just because it comes with so much stuff this time of year, intentional or not.
yeah, and then when you next one, you really feel the absence, right?
Yeah.
You remember those. So that makes a lot of sense. So with this stress, or maybe this time period where, like you said, there's no good mood or bad mood, right? It's just our sentiments and our feelings and what each person goes through. Why do people try to like relieve stress, and why is it oftentimes during this time period is it alcohol as a way to cope with stress?
I mean, as humans and living creatures, we all want to be well. Like we are built to be alive and be well. And when we experience high stress or loss or sadness, it's always like triggering something to be aware of, like what's wrong, what's something that we have to work through to survive. So we all want to survive and thrive. The hard part is we don't always have the like access to everything, like the light switch that says, okay, all the stress went away, now you can all be happy and like all good things, right? Realistically, sometimes it's like, okay, everyone's normalizing a glass of wine while I cook. Okay, cool. Who realized the 3 hours you were cooking, you drank a bottle and a half? Or when people are coming over, you're having feelings and you're just like, all right, this is a lot of people for me, but you're trying to numb down this anxiety. Sometimes you're having a little more cocktails or holiday parties, or just normalizing that like open bar and now it's a great time, right? So we've normalized it as a culture and as a community to use these coping strategies or like celebratory tools, but doesn't mean that that's the only one that we have, but it's just so systemic. Also, when we like families have all had, all cultures have had access to some kind of fermented alcoholic or like, some kind of drink, but to the point that us as a culture, we just are very like excess sometimes. We'll go over the top just because, right?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, a couple of things came to mind. One, the feeling of wellness, right? That speaks. I think that speaks to preventionists. Like Tracy, myself, and our team. Why we have these presentations, I think it speaks to Officer Perez and the Traffic Bureau, the wellness of the community, right? Why they're doing these things. Yourself as a clinical director. So I think that's kind of like a bottom line. And there was something else that you mentioned that stood out to me, but in the accessibility of alcohol during this time, right? We saw what Rashane was sharing, that the sales of alcohol jumped those 30 plus days, right? Between Thanksgiving and New Year's. And we see that relate the outcomes, right? Whether it's DUIs or other incidents with alcohol.
Fights.
Yeah,
I think
fights.
that, like Mr. Officer Perez could also like identify, this is a season of like elevated emotion, elevated celebration, elevated like extra.
Correct. Yeah, 100%. There's a lot of conflicts between family. Now you throw in alcohol and then you start getting all these disturbing calls. When it's a time when we're supposed to love one another and just enjoy one another, it turns, once you add alcohol and you throw in all these life stress situations, and situation gets volatile. So I 100% agree.
So that's something that like made me think about that I'd like to share, if that's okay, that alcohol, usually we're using it so celebratory, right? But it also diminishes a lot of our like decision-making impulse control. Our frontal cortex, our decision-making body goes down. So it's a little more like, all right, well, I'm just gonna say it now. Filters are down, and like that's why people can celebrate during anxiety, but also all the other things that might come out, like, okay, a loose tongue in a family, you're like, all right, this is a family, we said we're not gonna fight here, but here we are. So it does stuff to like numb our receptors to anxiety and distress.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed, I had a conversation with some coworkers about, alcohol being something that's featured at these family parties, right? Because at least for me, being a Latino, Latinx background, families are big, so maybe the tensions or whatever that you were talking about, but alcohol seems to be a feature in my culture, my community. I'm not sure, with your culture and your background, but it seems like in different ethnicities, alcohol features in these family events, right? Times.
Oh yeah, I think all cultures have not, I don't want to like misspeak because I haven't researched enough, but a lot of cultures have a tool of just a celebratory like glass of wine, or like it's just part of the culture. Like a glass of wine in Europe is cheaper than a bottle of water. When I was in Spain, I was like, this is just crazy. But it's also our use of why we do it is a different driver than other cultures. Of like, is it so that we can stay up longer, or like decrease our anxiety longer, or just keep the elevated like looseness of the environment a little longer, And so that's a different thing that we all could dissect a little more for our individual experiences.
Focusing on that why, right? We've mentioned stress, a top one. Is there any other ways or techniques that you can suggest to deal and cope with that stress, rather than opt for alcohol? Maybe there's something else that can help and maybe be more beneficial, right?
Yeah, there's a lot we can do, but it's the hard part is like, it's easiest when it's already part of your lifestyle, so that your stress, once you start feeling it, or like just something doesn't feel the most balanced, you can address it and give it that space. But a lot of us have like back-to-back schedules and back-to-back thoughts that like even like talking to ourselves for that moment isn't that like accessible. So, but I do promote people to talk to themselves and really just explore, what is that? I'm feeling something here. It's like, is there something that came up? For example, I think Rajane just mentioned earlier, like she was feeling a little nervous, or, some of us are very used to public speaking, but we still feel like, ooh, there's a little pressure in my chest. I need to talk about that. I need to process what that is. And it's okay. I think a lot of us haven't normalized, like, it's okay that I don't want to be here for 5 hours. Maybe I want to be here for 2 hours, right? And really notice our threshold. So I think part of it is asking ourselves, what are the triggers that would make me feel outside of my space? Of course, we can do certain things like eating our comfort foods, but then that can also be unhealthy depending on how we approach that. Sometimes it's just talking to somebody or just figuring out a creative expression so that that energy that is building up for some reason goes somewhere else, into the energy of cooking food, into the energy of making a craft, or like stretching. Most of us don't pause and stretch and breathe enough. Most of us don't get out of, like, especially since COVID times, how many of us got out of our seat today? And a lot of us like forget that those are parts of our wellness and our lifestyle approaches, right? We move so we break down tension in our body. And sometimes it's like, hey, I want to be at this activity, but I don't want to be exposed to all this risk factors for me to like grab an extra glass of wine or grab this beer that I didn't want. Maybe I'm gonna, and I used to do this, is like, all right, I'm gonna do ginger beer and I'm gonna put it in a cup just so that they know that there's something fizzy in here. They don't have to know what it is. And it looks like the same color. For some clients, it was like that replacement of like, hey, I'm gonna hold this, and this is my non-alcoholic replacement so that I can still socialize in this setting and not feel out or different. But for some people, that's too much of a vulnerability still, right?
Yeah, so it seems that when we have the stress or the tension, it should be released, right? Whether it's talking to ourselves, talking with someone else. You talked about creative expression. And I think maybe why people use alcohol is because, into what Rashanae was sharing earlier, that it seems like you're happy when you start drinking because it's a release of dopamine, but the fact is that it's a depressant, right?
Yeah, it's numbing your receptors.
Yeah,
It's like desensitizing the things that would normally make you feel elevated in your feelings.
and that dopamine maybe feels like that liquid courage, right? You're not yourself. You're releasing something, right? It seems like you're releasing something. But what you're offering or what you're sharing is there's other ways to do that, right?
Mhm.
And actually release that stress. You have to cope with that stress, right?
Yeah.
Not adding these decisions that drive under influence, breaking relationships with your family, injury. There's so many things, right, that can go when you're under the influence. But what you're sharing it seems kind of like a controlled manner, right? You have a say in it.
Yeah. Maybe you need to go on a walk after like every 30 minutes. I'm just going to go outside. I'm going to pretend I have to take out the trash. Like, I don't know. We have to figure out what our normal releases are and do it as often as regularly as possible. And I think we've talked about this before, like, maybe I've talked about it so often. It's like, what are our 5 basic like self-care tools that I need to do? Did I breathe enough? Let's pause and take those breaths. Have I moved enough? Like, even if it's just rolling your shoulders sometimes, and you can feel the tension when you're having conversations with family members, you're like, oh, you make me feel like, ugh, like you're asking me about my dating life, about my like dog, about my, whatever. So, but then we can also maybe look at, have I eaten well? Not just junk to put junk, because that's our body wants to be well, but we're putting stuff that's just like, I feel heavy and want to go to sleep, right? Am I sleeping enough? Am I having enough personal contact, healthy personal contact? So that's what I always recommend, is figuring out what your top 5 is, of like, these are my back pocket, feel good, and it doesn't cost me anything, and I can do it at any time to create some balance into my lifestyle.
I'll have to work towards our personal top 5. I like
We all have them. It just, we a lot of times don't give ourselves the space.
Well, thank you so much, for sharing your expertise and your wisdom. I appreciate it, Angela, as always. So we're gonna start wrapping up. We definitely want to hear from the audience. So let me share back the slides. So if the audience have any questions for Angela or any of our speakers today, please feel free to unmute yourselves, write it in the chat. I did want to share some of these resources for driving during the holidays. Metro LA has free passes, free rides until January 10th. Or in prior years, it used to be Christmas Eve until Christmas morning, about 2, 3 a.m. Same with New Year's Eve, New Year's. But right now it's January 10th. It's all free rides. AAA, if you're a member, they also do Tipsy Toe services for New Year's. I think it's like 6-7 miles they offer, but that's a service that you can look into. And then also check for Uber or Lyft. In the past, they've also done similar things during the holidays where it's affordable and it's a safe way to get home. So that's just some tips for the community. And then, yeah, questions and answers. Does anybody in the audience have any questions for any of our guest speakers, our intern, for Tracy or myself?
I don't necessarily have a question. However, I wanted to make a comment and say that I jumped in on the presentation a little late. However, the officer Perez and Angela had just great facts, and typically I get on here so I can bring these presentation facts back to the City of Carson residents. However, today I learned a lot for myself. And so I'm grateful for that. And I just wanted to give some kudos to the presenters today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I got a question. I think it was actually sent to me privately, but
Okay.
it says, how would you suggest approaching family members who tend to overindulge? So that's, I think a lot of us see this, right, in our family. Like we're just, okay, here's another plate. Sometimes we have to really strategize. How are we going to do this so we can like balance this out a little bit? And I can't give ideas based on like what works for everybody, but maybe it's like, hey, I'd like to serve you guys. I'll be the one that serves you so that I'll pour your glass of wine. I'll pour this, I'll mix it. Like, hey, let me do that. If that's something you feel like you're capable to do, or maybe you have someone to help support that balance, maybe that's something we do. And it can be really hard for a family of 30 and like, I'm not going to serve all of you, but those are just some ideas of maybe I can like have it like be the one that's like, this is my gift to you all. I want to create your plate so that it's a little more balanced and you don't feel like you're contributing to the boundaryless experience. Anyone else have ideas? I think this is, everyone's has customized based on your family too.
Well, I don't mind sharing. I know I come from a household where my dad had a alcohol abuse problem, and for the holidays, I mean, what we did is just all our family members agreed and no alcohol when we were together to try to minimize the temptation for my father. And I mean, it worked out well. You don't need alcohol to have a good time.
Yeah, the support system, right?
Correct.
So yeah, that's great.
I actually had an experience with alcohol that kind of changed my perspective on alcohol. I had a few friends, like family friends, people that we grew up with in our generation, like as friends. They actually died as a result of drunk driving. So that kind of really made a huge impact. And actually, as it relates back to the holidays, this particular one of them passed away New Year's, not New Year's Eve, Christmas Eve. So that was very unfortunate. So with that happening, it kind of changed our perspective on drinking and driving and just binge drinking in general. So I felt like that was something that really made a huge impact in our lives, because that happened right around the time when we were all turning 21, like as far as my group of friends. So it kind of like really scared us straight before we even, got started per se. So, yeah.
It's always really sad that those are the reasons sometimes why like we get like, it jolts us into like awareness that this is very real.
Absolutely.
And Russian, appreciate
No
that.
problem.
Is there anyone else from the audience? So there's a question from the audience in the chat. During the holidays, do the police increase patrolling?
Yes, during the holidays, we do increase our basically presence, like not just our regular patrol shift, but there's specific officers, like I mentioned earlier, specifically assigned to DUI enforcement. Just like we've all mentioned during the holidays, the alcohol plays a huge factor in these gatherings that we have. So we know the severity of DUI accidents. So we're specifically out there looking for DUI violators and trying to minimize the risk and potential or harm to the community.
All right, anyone else from the audience? No? Well, thank you. Thank you for participating, for asking your questions and sharing your experiences. It is much appreciated. So we'll start wrapping it up. One option to do at a family friend gathering is to have non-alcoholic cocktails available. Thank you. Another question in the chat. Angela, what's the best way to?
I'm sorry, you cut out first.
It says, the question in the chat says, Angela, what's the best way to reduce stress?
I can't say one because there's a lot. I mean, the one thing that we have in that we are our own contained existence is we can be mindfully breathing. Like, I know we're breathing because you're not passing out when you walk, but it's the one regulatory system that you have in your body that you have mindful, like cognitive control over. Like it's our, our lungs are a muscle and can be really tense. So us creating the expanding and the relaxing in a slow paced way brings air to our brain, lets it circulate and move the blood to a little more balance versus like this racing heartbeat experience we have. So I think that that's my always like back pocket like recommendation is, did you breathe 3 slow and controlled breaths every hour? And notice even what happens, how you feel when you do it. Like let's say in a day, track yourself every hour. Did I take my 3 slow and controlled breaths? Is that day different than the other days that you don't do it?
Very, very practical, right? Very easy. I like that. Thank you, Shanti, for your questions. Appreciate it. Thanks, Officer Perez and Angela, for your awesome responses. Have a great, safe holiday.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So before our audience leaves, definitely wanted to share contact information for our speakers. So if you want to take a screenshot or if you'd like to request the
My email's incorrect. I need a Bartolome.
all right.
I don't know where it's gonna go.
Yeah. Well, there you can take a screenshot now, or if you'd like to request, the slide or the slides afterwards via email, we can do that as well. We can share this PowerPoint with the speaker contact information. Tracy and myself, community organizers, in Gardena, I'm in Inglewood. Here's our contact information at the top, and then we have an awesome team. We have Jessica, who's also in Gardena, Tiffany Tan and El Segundo, Richard Biss and Carson, and then we have Carol and Jeannie Shimatsu, who is our program coordinator, who is also part of the South Bay. And then to the bottom right, you see all our social media channels. So please visit us at AADAP Inc. or our Asian American Drug Abuse Program and see what we're doing as a collective agency. So thank you so much. Tracy, do you have anything else you would like to share?
No, I just want to say thank you again to Angela and Officer Perez for coming and sharing your knowledge. Thank you, Rashane, for being transparent and sharing your experiences as well, and how alcohol can affect anybody, anytime, and how we need to
No
be
problem.
careful with it.
As Shanti said, we hope everyone has a safe holiday. They enjoy it. Practice your breathing skills. Yeah, take care. So thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.